Good morning. We'll just give it a couple more minutes to give people a chance to sign in. So we'll start, like I said, in a couple minutes. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll get started now. Seems we have some more people attending, so we might as well get started. So good morning, and thank you for joining me for this webinar series about the journey to a post-COVID-19 economy through digital transformation. My name is Kevin Keys. I am an account executive. Whoops, I apologize for that. My name is Kevin Keys, and I'm an account executive here at Navient with a focus on the insurance industry. Prior to joining Navient, I was in insurance for 17 years, and during that time, I worked for multiple carriers as well as spent some time on the agency side with a focus on commercial insurance. As you can see, I have achieved the CPCU designation, and I am currently the education chair of the Cleveland CPCU chapter. And just some quick notes for today's webinar. Everyone will be muted as the presentation is being recorded, but please feel free to type any questions or comments you have into the chat box, and I'll be sure to address them. So as I said, this is a 4-part webinar series, and this is the second part of that series and we will be focusing on Modernize and integrating your systems. And for today's agenda, we'll be talking about digital transformation and retiring legacy systems, getting to the cloud, and a solution to get you to the cloud known as F3. So just to kind of talk briefly about digital transformation, it is a buzzword we've all heard of throughout the industry and hear all the time. But just to kind of give an idea of what we're all really talking about, it really is about using technology to modify and create new processes. Give that customer that return on experience they expect to have in today's economy, and most importantly, to create and modify the business culture at your company. And really, when we talk about modernizing your systems, business culture really is key. And it's because this process does take time and can eat up a lot of resources. And if the culture hasn't transformed to accept this, it will lead to pain down the road. And before we talk about the pains that could come from that, it's important to talk about some of the challenges that are facing insurance overall. These were pre-COVID-19 and are sure to be with the insurance industry after the pandemic. And the big three really are talent, innovation, and legacy systems. When we look at talent gap, or we look at talent, one of the main issues facing insurance is that young people, and especially IT professionals, don't see insurance as a career they want to go into. And one of the main reasons is because they see what the technology insurance is using and they don't see it as something they want to get involved with. Another issue is innovation. Trying to innovate off a legacy system, it is possible, but it does take more time and it is more of a challenge than using a more modern system. And then finally, legacy systems, which we're going to be talking about today. When we look at legacy systems, some of the big issues that are facing the insurance when they aren't on the legacy system. One, security. Obviously, if you're using an older system, it's just not as secure as a new one, a more modern system. Another issue is compliance. The laws that are being written today and are going to be in the future are going to be written for companies using modernized systems. They're not going to be used for companies that are using legacy systems, which means it's going to be more difficult to stay in compliance if you're on a legacy system. Another major issue, increased long-term cost. As we talk about talent issues in insurance, we're talking about also about the fact that baby boomers are retiring and they're taking their knowledge of the legacy system they've been working on with them as they go out the door. And to try to fill that gap is becoming more and more expensive to fill. And then finally, lost opportunities. A legacy system just isn't meant to give the return on experience customers today expect. Now, probably one of the silver linings of all this is the fact that 60 to 70% of those in insurance are still on legacy systems. But the expectation is that by 2030, 90% of those in insurance will be on modern systems. The catch to that, though, is that doesn't mean all those 60 to 70% of insurance companies that are on legacy systems today will be part of that 90%. And to kind of sum up what I mean by that is, this is a great line from Ernest Hemingway. And how did you go bankrupt? Two ways: gradually and then suddenly. And that kind of really does sum up digital transformation, in that if you don't go through the process and you don't begin the digital transformation, you're going to be left behind. And what you'll see is that you'll begin to lose market share gradually and then all of a sudden. And the reason is because the gap between what you're offering on your legacy systems and what other companies who went through modernization, who went through digital transformation can offer customers will be so massive and so obvious that you'll just end up going away. So when we think of digital transformation, it really comes down to four parts. You have your processes, your modernization and integration, automation and content management, and return on experience. And the key really here is that this is a journey. And just to kind of just talk about that, you don't want to try to do this all at once. You don't want to try to do this piecemeal, talk about return on experience and then maybe do processes. It is a journey. And for that journey, you really do need a guide. And that's really where Navient comes into play. And as we talked about in our first part of our webinar series, where we started the journey, we talked about process intelligence. And process intelligence really is important because it's about using your data to give you that unbiased, non-subjective view of your processes. And when it comes to digital transformation, at the heart of it is automation. And one of the things you'll hear when you start looking at automation is never automate a bad process. And that really goes throughout digital transformation and can be applied to what we're talking about today as well as modernization and integration. And because when you talk about modernization, the one thing you don't want to just do is take how you operate on your legacy systems and then just move it to a modern system. You're not taking advantage of what digital transformation is really about. And that goes the same with integrating data. It's not, you don't want to just take your siloed data on your legacy system, move it over to a modern system, and not have those integrations that make you more efficient, make you be able to standardize your processes. The biggest thing, like I said before, is to figure out ways to automate your processes. So then the question is, why modernize? A couple of points. One of the great things about modernizing, it really enhances your business continuity and really helps with disaster recovery capabilities, as well as create a highly flexible and secure operating models. Another real reason to modernize is, as we look at COVID-19 and the economy that is going to be coming after it, there's going to be a real high demand for IT professionals. And that's not just in insurance, but across the economy. And when you modernize, especially with systems like OnBase, you're getting systems that can enable non-IT employees to do IT things. And that really is going to be huge for companies to really look at. Because again, you're not going to be able to get that those IT professionals are just going to be, there isn't going to be enough in the market for what everybody needs. So you're really going to have to rely on your systems to be able to have non-IT people to do those IT things. Some of the other things about legacy systems, like I said before, I was in insurance for a long time. I worked on a legacy system like this mainframe. The one thing I will say about it, and I'm sure we all have our jokes about, how legacy systems operate and everything like that. The one thing I will say about it is it worked. You came in, you logged on, 99.9% of the time, it was up and running. But some of the issues with it, we definitely know it wasn't efficient. And when you go to a modern system, it's been shown you can get at least 20% increase in operational efficiencies. Another great thing about moving away from a legacy system, you reduce the tech maintenance. You can get up to 15% or more in cost savings by going to a modern system. And really, one of the best things about moving to a legacy systems, you get to go through your digital transformation, and you really get to take advantage of automation, which is really key to really help you become more efficient and make you more successful in the marketplace. So when it comes to modernization, what are some of the barriers that we see? So when we talk to companies about, hey, let's talk about modernization, we usually find these three areas that we run into. First one, customer service risk. This is about, you have your systems such as claims that need to be running 24/7, and the idea of trying to shut it down and go to a modern system can be very scary for some people, and that's why you need to have somebody like a guide like Navient to help you walk you through the process that really isn't always necessary to do. No program fatigue. When you talk about modernization, you're talking about using a lot of resources, as well as it can be very time heavy. A lot of time can be used to do the modernization process, and the momentum built at the beginning can lose steam. Another issue, competing priorities. Due to time and cost of modernization, this will take away from other competing departments. And to go back about what I was talking about with digital transformation and business culture, you need to do that business culture, and you need to make sure the business culture is transforming in the beginning so that everybody's on board and understands why the modernization needs to take place. If you do that, you pretty much you'll be in a good position to avoid these issues, these barriers. So when we talk about, approaches to modernization, there really are 5 different types. First one, known as greenfield core systems. This is pretty much you're starting from scratch with a modern simplified core system. You usually find this with startups, or we actually had a client who decided that they wanted to go into a completely new line of insurance and was able to just start from scratch. Next approach is preservation and protection. This is where you wrap the legacy system with a new layer of tech that can support current and emerging applications. This is usually a good idea for companies that have a substantial investment in their legacy systems. Third approach is phase core replacement. This is using new tech is implemented in a continual fashion, and the new system grows continually until it's capable of handling all the other existing layers of the legacy system. Fourth approach, simplification. This is you're taking the complexity out of the middle layers of the legacy system. That would be like your back offices, your business processes, but you're leaving the central core as well as your customer-facing layers unchanged. And then finally, big bang. This is pretty much complete overhaul of the aging legacy system. So to kind of pivot to the other part of today's topic, integration. When you talk about insurance companies and when they're on legacy systems, they've been around for a very, very long time. And you have your underwriting, you have your claims, you have your actuarial, and the data that they have is pretty much housed in their departments, and there's not a lot of communications between those departments and whatever other departments are you talk to. And when you talk about modernization, you really need to start looking at ways to integrate that data so you can become more efficient and be able to find new ways to use that data in each department. And so when you think about integrating systems, the really big thing is to make sure you really want to try to get that data housed on one platform, such as a system like OnBase. And from that, you'll be able to start figuring out ways to automate your workflows, which then will lead to reduced data storage, plus reduced data redundancies, which will lead to a lot of cost savings. And before we kind of move forward, it's always important to I figure it's important to talk about two of the big names in platforms out there for insurance, Guidewire and Duck Creek. And those are really great platforms, but they don't give that full customer picture. And they really need a system like OnBase to help them out. And the reason is because OnBase is that document management go-to tool for these possible policy management platforms. And OnBase with them would helps empower workers to manage all the document types, simplifies information access and control, keeps information secure, and most importantly, it helps speed up new product and process development. And the reason is because OnBase can be that codeless configuration so that non-IT employees can help design or even change products to meet your evolving needs. And so when we talk about modernization, you can't talk about modernization without mentioning the cloud, because obviously that is something that pretty much everyone is looking at doing. And so when we talk about the cloud, some of the benefits, disaster recovery, data availability, security, manage upgrades, incident response, and cost savings. And just real quick, like with cost savings, when you go to the cloud, you don't have that hardware, software, and networks on premise. And so then you don't have to have the IT staff to manage it. And again, going back to what we were talking about with the pressure that's going to be to get that IT talent across our economy, to not have to find people to do that, but then be able to use your IT budget to find IT professionals to come in and help you innovate and expand your market share, that's going to be key. And we at Navient have the solution, the Highland Cloud solution, and this is a very secure and private cloud platform that would be able to improve your business agility to help you become that customer-centric organization. It can help your departments such as underwriting and claims take more direct control over sourcing their own IT solutions. It can help simplify and standardize IT infrastructure and app platforms, and most importantly, improve time to market for new products and help expand your market segments. So then the question becomes, well, great, how do I get to the Highland Cloud? I have this legacy system that we've been operating on for the past 40 years, if not longer. What do we do? Well, that's where the solution Federated File Framework, known as F3, comes into play. So what F3 does, it provides you the ability to simplify the migration of your documents on your legacy system based upon when you need them. F3 is your legacy documents remain in the legacy system, and you can then instantly access them on demand from OnBase. And in this process, those documents get migrated to OnBase. So that's kind of a mouthful, so we'll kind of walk through what I mean by that. So when you look at kind of a standard conversion, you're trying to get off that legacy system into the modern system. You kind of can look at this from, okay, I have commercial auto policy line or commercial auto line, and I have my renewals for say 2021. That's January 1st to December 31st. How can I get them to OnBase? Well, in the normal process, you have them on the legacy system. They have to be taken off that system, moved to a temporary storage so that they can be modified to be put onto an OnBase, to be put on OnBase. The problem with this solution is that you have 3 copies of every renewal now, and the amount of storage that takes up is massive. Plus, it's very time consuming, and if there's any issues, it can lead to a lot of headaches. But of course, then once that renewal is in OnBase, the user is able to easily access it, easily make changes and all of that stuff that they normally would do, such as endorsements, cancellations. So where does F3 come into play? F3, so you have the user who says, okay, I want to go and do my January 1 commercial auto policy renewal. They're working in OnBase, they go to OnBase, request a document. OnBase goes to F3, who goes to the legacy system, and because of how F3 works, it can take that file and do the changes it needs to do to put it in OnBase instantly So then the user can then work on it. At the same time, it makes a copy of it in OnBase, so that the next time that person needs to work on that policy, again, whether it's for an endorsement, a billing change, whatever, they're staying in OnBase. So that file has officially now migrated to OnBase. And so just to go back, when you look at this process, think about it from all the renewals for commercial auto and all the policies for commercial auto from January 1 to December 31st. They all get touched because they all have to get either issued or canceled. And so once they get touched, they're now in OnBase. You also take the fact, the point is, or the other point too, is that all the new policies are being put on OnBase as well. So by the end of the year, December 31st, all that entire line of business is now on OnBase. And you can do that, obviously for commercial auto, property, workers' comp, and just kind of think about how that would all play out when you're trying to migrate all those files to OnBase. And then of course, obviously there are a lot of files still on the legacy system that doesn't get touched. And F3 would then do a background migration of those files to get them to OnBase, and then you can look to shut down that legacy system. So to kind of just wrap up for today, we do live in uncertain times, and it seems like we're jumping from crisis to crisis. But this will come to an end, and the economy that comes out of it will be different. And the challenges, and although there will be new challenges and new risks that those in insurance have to face. And digital transformation really is necessary to be able to face those new challenges. And modernization and integration of your system is absolutely key, an absolute key part of your transformation. As we've talked about today, modernization will help you attract and retain talent, will help give that return on experience your customers expect both today and in the future. It also will help you innovate faster and go to market faster. And that's really, this is where Navient really comes into play. We have years of experience working with those in insurance and helping organizations in the industry along their journey to digital transformation. When I've been in insurance for all those years, the phrase that always came up, trusted advisor. And people in insurance want to be the trusted advisor to their clients. You need a trusted advisor to help you along your journey of digital transformation, and that's where Navient comes into play. So just as a reminder, the next webinar of our series will be about automation and content management. Just take a quick look to see if there's any questions or comments. Nope, doesn't seem like anybody has any questions. So again, thank you for coming, and thank you for taking your time out of your day to listen. If you have any questions, you want to talk to me personally, you can email me, give me a call, or you can check us out at navient.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.